Hey everyone and welcome. Today we're going to pull back the curtain on something that honestly touches pretty much everything we buy and use. The huge, often invisible risks hiding in our global supply chains. It's a system that's created incredible opportunity for sure, but as you're about to see, it is also absolutely full of dangers.
Okay, let's just start with a number that should really grab your attention. 1.2 billion euros. That was the jaw-dropping fine slapped on Meta for just one single data protection screw-up. It's a pretty powerful wake-up call, right? It shows that in the world we live in now, a breakdown in compliance can have truly staggering consequences.
But this isn't just about data security or big financial penalties. It's about people. And this statistic, well, it reveals a really tough reality. Almost 40% of companies admit they know parts of their supply chains are at risk for things like forced labor or child labor. This is way beyond a simple compliance issue. We're talking about a massive ethical crisis.
So, when you see these gigantic fines and you hear about these widespread ethical problems, it really brings us to a critical question. It's one that every single business owner, every manager, and honestly, even every one of us as consumers ought to be asking. How secure is the supply chain that you depend on? Because a single weak link anywhere in the world can bring the whole thing crashing down.
And that leads us right into our first big topic. We're calling this the billion-dollar problem for a reason. We're about to dig into why supply chain compliance has gone from being some boring back-office checklist to a really high-stakes strategic game that can literally make or break a company today.
So let's make sure we're all on the same page. What is supply chain compliance risk? Well, put simply, it's the chance that any single part of your chain, from the farm that grows the raw material to the factory putting it all together, fails to meet the legal or ethical rules. And here's the most important part. One supplier's mistake can put your entire business at risk.
And the cost of that mistake? Oh, it's huge. Forget those crazy headline-grabbing fines for a second. The data shows that the average non-compliance incident costs a company somewhere between $14 and $40 million. And that's not just the fines. That number includes supply disruptions, product recalls, and maybe worst of all, the long-term, devastating damage to your brand's reputation. Okay, so if the stakes are this incredibly high, why is it so darn difficult to get this right? For our next section, we're going to try and navigate what you could really only describe as a compliance minefield. We'll break down the 4 biggest challenges that make managing these global supply chains such a ridiculously complex task. The complexity is just mind-boggling. I mean, you've got companies trying to juggle dozens of different countries' legal systems. At the same time, they're practically flying blind. They have very little idea what's happening beyond their direct first-tier suppliers. And on top of all that, the rules are changing constantly, while the resources to actually keep up with it all are always tight. It's a total perfect storm of challenges.
Okay, that's the minefield. So the big question is, how do you cross it safely? This next part is all about building a proactive strategy. We're going to open up the risk reduction toolkit and walk through the absolute best practices for getting out ahead of these problems before they happen.
You know, any strong strategy has to start with a rock-solid foundation. First, that means setting crystal clear, non-negotiable standards in a code of conduct. Then you have to vet every single supplier you work with, new and old. Document everything, create that paper trail. And finally, you have to map your entire supply chain to get rid of those dangerous blind spots.
But look, a good foundation isn't enough. This stuff requires constant vigilance. It's not a set-it-and-forget-it deal. This means you're doing regular audits, and that includes surprise ones. It means training everyone involved, from your own teams to your suppliers. You need someone whose job it is to own this program. And you absolutely need a plan for when things go wrong, because they will. And of course, you have to use technology to automate as much of this as you can.
Now we've talked about the risks, we've gone through the toolkit. But in this final section, I want to push this conversation beyond just a simple checklist of to-dos. Because the ultimate goal here isn't just to check a bunch of boxes, it's to fundamentally shift your organization's entire mindset from seeing compliance as a chore to making it a core part of your culture.
And this right here, this is the whole ballgame. This is the critical mindset shift. When you see compliance as just another chore, you're always reactive. It's just a cost center. It makes your business fragile. But when you see it as a part of your culture, you become proactive. It becomes a value driver. And you become incredibly resilient.
Because when compliance is a core value, when it's really in the company's DNA, it's no longer just the legal team's problem. It becomes everyone's responsibility, from the person in procurement all the way up to the CEO. And that shared ownership, that is the ultimate defense. It protects the company and builds lasting trust with your customers.
And that really brings us to our final thought. As you reflect on your own company, or even the companies you buy from, I want you to ask yourself this question. Is your compliance strategy just a shield? Something you use to reactively defend yourself when problems pop up? Or is it your sharpest sword, a proactive tool that creates resilience, builds trust, and gives you a serious competitive advantage? Think about it.